The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good afternoon or good morning. This is Mike Taylor. It's the top of the hour. Thanks for joining today. We're going to give folks just a couple more minutes. There's several folks, looks like they're still joining right now, so we'll get started in just about 2 minutes. Okay, there still may be a couple people joining, but in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining today, our webinar on Rapid and Sustainable PPM, 3 Steps to Success. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping and make sure that everyone's good with some of the things that are going on here. So let's move on. So to begin with, this, I'm going to say this a couple times, just with all the data requirements and personal identification requirements and everything that are out there now. I do have to inform everyone that this webinar will be recorded and it will be distributed. Right now we have everybody in muted mode, so any questions you see on the screen right there, I've highlighted the question box that should be on your GoToWebinar, and you can see there how it fills in the question box there. And then again, we are recording today's presentation and it will be provided at the end of the meeting. So if there are any questions at this point in time or people having problems, please put it in the question box right now. And we'll move forward. There's all our copyright information, and we can skip past that. And who's doing the talking? That's me, Mike Taylor, president of Innovative E. Just a very quick background on myself. I am PMP. I've been doing project management and project management solutions for more than a couple decades now. So goes way back. And the moderator is Pamela, and you can see her information there in the on the screen next to me, and you can also find her on the console if you need anything or have any questions. So moving forward, we're going to start with a quick poll. So this is going to be a little bit interactive. I'm going to ask you guys, in terms of a solution or project management information system, does your organization have one and it's awesome? Do you maybe have a collection of tools, project management, otherwise Excel, you know, kind of more of ad hoc types project management solutions, or no real solution at all? So I'm going to ask Pamela to put the poll up now, and I'm going to give everybody a minute to answer it. So again, there it is. Hope everybody can see it. If not, pop a question in the question box. So we've got several respondees coming in. Awesome. So it looks like so far, the not having a system is in the lowest. Having a collection of system is in the lead. I'm going to give everybody just another minute. If you haven't popped your answer in there, please do so now. Give everybody about another 10 seconds. And Jeopardy music cue now. Final chance. All right. Pamela, if you go ahead and close the poll for me. I appreciate it. All right, interesting results. So starting with the least there, we have, oops, go back, put my pen in motion here. So no real system at all comes in at 8%. followed by have one and it's awesome, 23%. I definitely want to talk to whomever those folks are, learn a little bit more about that. Have a collection of tools, PM, otherwise, and that is at 69%. And that's pretty much what I expected, working in this industry and seeing all the industry stats. That's what we find most of all, is that even here, as we said, more than halfway through 2018, most organizations don't have a cohesive project management system. It's usually a collection of email, Excel, maybe some Microsoft Project, Trello, Jira. There's all kinds of tools that are out there, Planner, and it's usually a collection of all those things that are being used. So thank you for participating in the poll, and that helps with some of our next discussion points as well. So what I want to talk about now, and we're going to talk a lot about the how, as the title of the session shows, how you get to rapid and sustainable PPM. But I think it's important for just a moment to back up to the why and what project management solution, right, is. So again, PPM, I think probably everybody on this call would know, but that's project portfolio management. It's kind of an industry term for doing everything related to project and portfolio and program management and what that looks like. So the first question is, why would you want to do that? Well, in today's environment, most work out there is kind of there's been a lot of surveys around this, kind of falls into project and product development type work. And by definition, those types of activities have a specific beginning, a specific end, and have some kind of outcome they want, versus operational type work, which has been mostly automated to a certain degree. And so with most people, most resources being consumed in that, it creates a tremendous opportunity if you, and per our survey, it says, a loosely connected set of technologies and processes. That's kind of what everybody's saying, 69% of folks. If you can create and centralize a project management solution, then you can create tremendous value. And then the graphic there is actually from a Forrester report that Microsoft had commissioned. These types of numbers are out there and are pretty well established that building better project and decision support systems, it creates tremendous value within an organization. And by the way, that is available for download on our site. So what is the what of a project management information system or a PPM solution? It's kind of interesting because a lot of times you have people talk about it in terms of a specific project. So Microsoft Project or Planner or Primavera or whatever the product is. Well, it's really most of the time not that. It's really a collection of products. And as you see in the definition we've come up there, it's not just the products, it's everything that goes into them, the customizations, configurations, integration, everything that makes up the whole of a PPM solution. Now, the difference between that and kind of the ad hoc solution that it seems like most people on this call have is that these are integrated for a single purpose. It's also important to understand that these solutions become living and must be intentionally planned and thoughtfully managed over time. And I suspect in most organizations, from what we've seen, the reason that most people don't have essential tools because they have either, number one, tried to put everything into one piece of technology instead of understanding it's a collection of technologies, and number two, haven't done that piece of understanding that it's a living or it becomes a living entity and it needs constant care and feeding. So what we're going to talk about today is built on the Microsoft Project Office suite. So there's a lot of components to that. Specifically, we're going to be looking a lot at how you would implement Microsoft Project. We also are talking about best of breed products that you can add to it that create a lot of additional value without having to go off and develop them. We see a lot of organizations that spend a lot of time developing things that could be purchased, and we're very much of the mindset that buy versus build is the way to go whenever possible. Not just for upfront costs, but for ongoing maintenance costs. So Edison Projects has actually won Microsoft's Partner of the Year a couple times, and is really what we consider to be one of the best breed products out there. I'm going to show a brief overview of that, but again, today we're focusing more on the how you build a PPM solution, rapid and sustainable. And really the core pieces of this is what we call proximal progression. So really about the three steps which you see come up over there, and we'll reiterate those a few times today. But it's really making sure that you're focusing on the people, process, and technology in narrow and lockstep progression. So if you're going to automate one thing, go automate that one thing or two things, whatever. But make sure that you're doing them all together. We see way too many times people will go and try to put everything in and say this solution does everything or this software does everything. We're going to see what all we can do. It makes a lot more sense to keep it narrowly focused. So that's a piece of advice that I hope folks will heed. Moving on from there, one of the things we see happening a lot is people are rethinking the project management or project portfolio management journey that they're having. There's a lot of reasons for this. I think the pace of change is always increasing. The ability to react to that change is increasing with things like cloud technologies now, where just a few years ago deploying a project management solution or any kind of heavyweight solution where you had a lot of moving parts took a lot of time and energy just around the technology, what you had to work with in the data center and the servers and all that. Now you can really turn a product like Microsoft Project On and Project Online on in a day. It takes almost no time. That doesn't always happen that way, but many times you can get it done very, very quickly. So when we see people, that these are really more what we see customers doing, not what we necessarily would say, are ways that you want to look at design imperatives for a PPM solution, but these are things that we hear over and over again in the marketplace. So people oftentimes are looking for things that can be deployed quickly and demonstrate immediate value. And one of the core things around immediate value is it's much more rare these days to see somebody get big funding to go out and build a big solution that will do everything for everyone in the organization. It's much more common to see folks say, all right, we've got a couple sets of things we want to do. We've got a little bit of money we want to invest in it. Let's see if we can demonstrate value there. And if so, then it's easier to get the stakeholders and the sponsors and the folks with the money to say, okay, I see where you guys are going with this. Let's go ahead and invest a little bit more and see if we can get more value out of it for the next step. The next thing is, and this is really important, is that it's easy to use for a variety of user types, work styles, and varying levels of project management maturity. The truth is, in organizations, there's no organization, and I can say this with confidence, having worked with a lot of different organizations doing project management solutions, there's no organization where you have a uniformity of, super high mature project portfolio managers, and that's all they do is manage projects, and they're all certified, and they know all the processes and everything else. That does not exist. There are some organizations that are much better than others in terms of having more matrixed, more professional project managers. But in most organizations, your project managers are folks who have matriculated up through whatever area of the business, whether the developer or engineer or whatever, and they get to be a lead, and then they become what some people will title a reluctant project manager or a casual project manager. So they still have other work they got to do, but they also have teams and deliverables that they have to work to. The things about the work styles is that there's more and more work styles are changing, and there's a lot of information that you'll read and see about how the way the workplace is changing with not just technology, but as younger workers get into the workplace, and the millennials and the other folks that come in the workplace have different ways to work, and you got to be able to accommodate that as well as things like development. You can't not look at what's going on with Agile, and a lot of the things that are going on with the Agile technologies or methodologies for managing software development and other types of projects. So the other key here is that folks often look at is, can you build something that can be a single source of truth? So at least you have a system that has all relevant information. It may not all be perfect initially. It may take some time to get there, but you have one single source of truth for all project business intelligence or information for decision support. And that's a key piece to it. There's a real hunger at higher levels of management and almost all organizations to be able to say, all right, what is really my project list, and is it accurate, and is it all in one area versus is it in somebody's inbox in one place and on a file share somewhere else, and a project plan often on another SharePoint site somewhere else or whatever. Where's one place I can go to get all my information around what's going on? Where's the truth? The other piece is that, can it grow with the organization needs over time? So if you go back to the first point, if you start and deploy quickly and just demonstrate value, what we see happen a lot of times is people go, hey, that looks pretty cool. Department X, you're doing this, I'm Department Y, we're kind of close to what you guys do. Can we get on board and use some of this functionality? And maybe it needs a little tuning or a couple different things. So you start to see an evolution of the systems over time. So a little bit about Innovative E. We deliver continuously amazing project management experiences. And if anyone's heard us say this tagline before, we always kind of chuckle at it because people say project management and amazing are sometimes or almost never used in the same breath. But when you do it right, when customers and organizations do it right, you really do get amazing results. When you can say, hey, look, we have our fingers on actionable information at the executive level, that's creating value. When you have the project managers and project stakeholders can say, look, I know what I need to do, and I've got a really good feeling for what's working and not within my projects, and the collaboration with my teams. And the team members themselves are saying, look, I can get my work done, and I'm not spending a lot of time having to update project management systems, but at the same time, I can see the value that my work's being tracked, and we're all staying on track together, and things aren't running off the road. So it really is something that's attainable there. We are a Microsoft PPM Premier Partner, and we are also partnered with Edison 365 Ideas Projects, formerly PS Plus, and we'll talk a little bit about that. They're a great organization to work with, and it's a fantastic product suite. So what is Microsoft Project Online for those who don't know? Project Online it evolved from what was Project Server, and now it's taking on kind of a new life. It's a much better and improved product. And you saw the word continuously on the last slide. Microsoft really has embraced the continuous integration. So since they've taken it online, they've really worked to improve the product tremendously. And if anyone's following closely, there's some new announcements coming around the new project look and feel. There's all kinds of great things that are going on. They're always improving the product. They're making it better, making performance better. But it also, the key there is that it allows for a single source of truth. You see that first line there, for project portfolio and resource data. So you can now do all kinds of things with the core platform out of the box, and that provides tremendous capabilities. Just one second. It does all kinds of other things as well, just built in because it's built on the Office 365 suite. It allows for things like document storage. You've got the issues risk management. The Microsoft suite is easily extensible and customizable, probably one of the more customizable solutions that you can find out of there. And then, of course, the last piece there is that it integrates really well with all the other Microsoft products. And Edison 365, as we mentioned, it really transforms the Project Online platform to more of a user-centric, centralized solution. It really improves vastly the functionality, a lot of reporting capabilities. The user experience is much more centralized around who you are as the user, as the project manager or a stakeholder. It's a solution that works on day one. It really extends the business intelligence capability with a real near-time data mart, and this is important for not to get into too much technical detail, but with Project Online, you can use data feeds to pull down information. Edison extends that capability and pulls a bunch of additional information. It pulls it on near real-time basis. It provides ability to pull additional data feeds from things like SharePoint lists and other things from your project sites, and it also, it has some error checking and built-in alerting and things like that. So people who've tried to do that know that that can be a little bit complicated. It solves all those problems. It's got a very comprehensive modular interface, modern interface. So it works on all devices. There's all kinds of templates and best practices. And again, it's a award-winning suite. So with that, what I want to do real quickly is I want to jump over, and I'm just going to do a very quick, for those who haven't seen it. This is the Edison interface, and again, today's presentation is more about the how than the what we're talking about doing. It's really how you get there, but just wondered for those who haven't seen it, this is Edison that sits on top of Project Online. You can see it's a very centralized interface that gives you all kinds of salient information right at your fingertips. This is the home. There is there's a My Page. You click on Personal, so this now surfaces all the information around me. So these are the projects that I would be concerned about or I'd be managing, and it gives you my statistics, which are a subset of the total piece there. And then there's all kinds of other stuff, but there's a lot of built-in reports, reporting models, things like the highlight report. A lot of folks find this. We have customers who use this all the time. It really takes, if you're updating your projects and keeping all your project information relevant and up to date, then you can take all that time that you used to spend creating status reports in Word or Excel or PowerPoint, you literally click one button, it does it in the highlight report. So there's all kinds of things that Edison does that just makes the project online that much better and that much easier to use. So that's why we recommend it there. In addition, out of the box with Project, this is the content pack, the Power BI content pack. You can do all kinds of things with business intelligence, but this is the Microsoft solution right out of the box that you can get with it. And Edison even makes this better as well, because now you have a SQL data mart that you can pull from that you can connect Power BI or any other business intelligence tool to. Tableau, business objects. We have customers who use all kinds of stuff with that as well. So just wanted to give folks a quick flavor for how the product looks. If you haven't seen it, we're happy to have demos and one-on-one presentations and go deeper into all that kind of functionality. But to pick back up with the how you get to a rapid and sustainable project management system, I'm going to start with really diving into these three steps. So one of the core things, and we talked about this before, is this idea of proximal progression. And you see there a term called core team. So one of the things we found in doing these types of implementations is, as an organization, if you're going to undertake building a PPM solution, you really need to identify a core team that's representative of different types of folks within your organization. So if it's a PMO, project management office, or a product development unit, you need to have folks that are probably more like the head or your head stakeholder who would be interested in everything that's going on, and maybe the sponsor for that solution. Probably a couple project managers. If you're doing resource management, you might want to have one of those folks on the team. And then probably a couple end users. So a broad representative of all the different functions that would be using the system, and make sure that they are enabled and empowered first on every step that you're taking. So that's why you see them that's the core team on step one. They're helping the folks up. And so then you get them up to step one, and then you move up to step two. This whole proximal progression thing is actually a learning it's a learning construct. It's well known within it for educators and things like that. So proximal progression or scaffolding. It's the whole idea of going from step A to B to C instead of skipping over and just trying to go from A to C, because your success rate's much faster and better, especially when you're talking to multiple people doing it. So we feel it's really important. Now, how does that factor into? That's the people part of it, and that kind of goes into the process and technology, but you really need to make sure that all three of those are moving in lockstep and narrowly. So that's kind of what we talked about there. So how do you put all this into motion? So putting it into motion, the foundation is the first step. So you see the PP&T, the people, process, technology, the essentials are put in place even before you go off and start to do your business process enablement. Make sure you've got your foundation set. This is the way we tend to approach it almost exclusively these days. The second piece is then start to look at, and this process can start in parallel with your foundation. It's no problem having it in parallel, but you really need to do this as a separate step. And this is where you start to dig in and get what business processes you're gonna go automate. We'll talk more about that. What kind of governance structure you're gonna have, what kind of business intelligence and reporting. So those pieces. And then the success management and adoption. This is sustainment, support, and growth. So these are the three key steps to building a rapid and sustainable project and portfolio information system. So the foundation, this is kind of a fun slide. So the foundation is all about getting it right from day one. So one of the things when some of us were kicking around, what are some good analogies? So we did a little research, and the Great Pyramid of Giza was built about 4,500 years ago. And there's not, without going out and researching it, I didn't really realize, but I would have thought it took maybe hundreds of years to build, but it actually only took 20 years to build. And the cost of maintenance, I mean, there's been, it's been weathered and cannibalized for stones and limestone and everything over the year, but it's a very low cost of maintenance. So it's low maintenance, right? Because the foundation was set very well. So what's an example of what if you don't get the foundation right? Well, what are the consequences? Well, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. There you go. Well, it's about 750 years old. You can go out and research it. They've spent millions of dollars over the years trying just to make sure it doesn't fall over, and reworking the foundation and doing all kinds of things. It actually took about 200 years to build the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and it has obviously a very high maintenance cost. So setting the foundation correctly from a people, process, technology piece is absolutely critical when you build anything, right? A physical structure or an ongoing system. So what are the basic steps to do this? So it really comes down for building the foundation to the platform build, the core team, and the customer success management framework or the adoption framework. And so what are the components of that, kind of the sub pieces of it? So looking at that, from the platform, the licensing has to be confirmed. You've got to go do your provisioning, which again, we're talking about Microsoft Project Online, PWA. This methodology, by the way, we've actually applied this same methodology to other systems, not just project management systems, SharePoint systems and other systems we've built, but this is specifically built for a PPM solution. So you make sure all your licensing is good. You make sure you've got your provisioned your different components of it and have them all working. And then you make sure that the functionality is all right. And this is critical to make sure you're not confused trying to do process automation at the same time, because it makes both processes go longer, both steps go longer. The core team setup and familiarize, again, you have to commit your core team. They have to put some time and energy into this. They have to be willing to go along on this journey and be leaders and be committed for the long term on this. Obviously, they need their licensing. And then we do a workshop, typically, or you can build a workshop to really understand what the platform does out of the box. And this is a really important concept to understand what you have before you start looking at what do you want to do with it, because we've seen folks that will take something and not completely understand how it behaves or what it does, and then try to start modifying it because they don't like the way it works. And most of the time, almost all the time, it's because they really don't understand. It's built that way for a reason. So it's really important that the core team understands how the technology is configured and how it works and what's there, so you don't go out and recreate the wheel. Things like the highlight report I mentioned earlier. We've seen a lot of customers go out and build, a status report or try to, pull information from a system and put it into a different system for automating a status report. And we're like, well, you already own that. If you have Edison, and then they're like, oh, I can just use that? Yeah, you can. So it's those kind of things. It's really important to understand what you have before you go out and try to build other things. And then the success management framework. This is really a framework, and it's an area where you identify all the different folks that are going to be involved with supporting this over time. And by support, the technical support piece is a small component of the whole piece. People think about support like, I can't log in, or it's break fix, or I don't know how to do something, which kind of support and training. This is also more the whole governance and cadence of how you're going to, in a structured fashion, make changes to the system and analyze those things that you want to do and make sure that you're not doing something that's, contra to the technology or doesn't work with your processes. So what does all this take? And we talk about rapid and sustainable. So, the drum roll there is we typically see that we can get this done in 1 to 4 weeks. And the biggest, I guess, the thing that takes the longest is oftentimes just working within organizational things like, believe it or not, getting the licensing confirmed. Oftentimes is it shouldn't take that long, but it does for whatever reasons. There are things that just take time, and getting people's time on calendars to get things done and work with your technical resources or whatever. But we really can, this is something we can see can be done very quickly. And from a cost, we talk about it's low cost, right? And so people say, well, what is low cost? Well, we can, for Innovative E to do this service, we can do this. Now, this is exclusive of licensing, so this is for the service piece component to get it all done. So we can usually get it done in the range of about 15K. So it's a pretty low barrier to entry to get a very robust project management system up and running. The next piece is the business process enablement. So now there's a lot more to this. And again, we could do this in parallel, and we have in many cases. You might start the foundation and getting those components done. But this looks a lot more like your traditional solution build. So it's got components to it that you would that you would see with building any type of solution. So you're looking at what is the, what are the processes, what are the interfaces to look like, what kind of projects are you going to manage, what kind of business intelligence, what are the components to it that you really want to go build. And then from a work breakdown structure, there's more to this work breakdown structure, because now you're actually going and doing things like, really eliciting requirements for what it is you're trying to do. You're designing for the build. There's a lot that goes into those two areas. A couple things I just want to hit, some highlights is the key pain points. If you solve X, then you get Y benefits. That's really important. All the way back to the first thing that we had in the line for design criteria that we see happens over and over again, and that's to be able to demonstrate value quickly. So you try to get those up there at the top of the list. However, you need to be able to demonstrate that you can do that and understand the risk of doing whatever those pain points are against what is the risk of not being able to make it happen, whether it's too much complexity technologically or too much change for people. So that's that second point of determining what's winnable is really critical there, and what you decide to go after, and can really influence the cost as well. And then you need to really also make sure you don't try to do too much in most cases, unless you only have one budget and that's all you're ever going to get. In that case, do everything for version 1.0. But most of the time, what we see people do is they try to go tackle a few things to demonstrate value. As you work through this process, through the requirements and build piece, you'll almost inevitably, there's actually no case we've ever seen where this hasn't happened, you'll come up with more ideas of things you want to do with the system. So we put everything else on a backlog, and that backlog becomes a living entity that then goes into your configuration and release management process, which we'll talk about later. Then you design for the initial build. You build your, again, trying to go as much possible out of the box, and trying to make sure you're doing your process reconciliation, and you ID your training requirements. So now that you know how you're going to configure the system, you can go say, this is what we're going to do from a training perspective. Continuing with that, you've got the build and go live. So the build piece, you're going to configure the solution. Again, you're going to work with the core team to workshop and do interactive training, make sure that they understand how the system works and how it's been configured, and everybody's on the same page. Then the core team really does user acceptance testing and any adjustments that are needed. Then really look at any last minute changes you need to make, and then whether you do this in Dev or QA or prod, you're typically going to end with at least a couple different PWA or Project Web Apps instances. And for those who don't know, when you go with Project Online, you have, Microsoft has now made it so that you can have unlimited instances out there. We recommend at least 2, maybe 3, depending on what you want to do, but always have at least your production and some other instance that you can play around in for changes you want to make. The go live will then consist of obviously the training for all the different folks, the broader folks outside of just the core, and then you really need to launch that success management framework as well, and follow the best practices and get a cadence and a process set up around what you're doing with your ongoing piece, which is what we'll actually talk about next. And you see that we put in there that is 4 to 12 weeks, and that is with, this one is much more dependent on what the requirements are for the solution. So 4 to 12 is kind of a common piece, and again, what is the cost of doing this? It can start as low as like what we did with the enablement piece. So I need to get my pen here. So it can be, oops. It can be in the 15K range, but then it can go up from there. It just depends. We have customers who come in with 25 users and and fairly simplistic processes they want to automate. You can have it all done with the foundation and the enablement piece. 4, 5, 6 weeks, good to go. I have other customers who come in and they have 600 users and they have a whole lot they want to do, and that's going to be even a lot longer than 12 weeks. So this phase really depends a lot on how much complexity and how big you're going after. So the success management and ongoing adoption framework. So this one is a little different. We don't actually have a WBS except to say this is where you're really going to put this component into motion. This is the ongoing caring and feeding of the application to make sure that it's got the right kind of focus and attention to sustain the needs of the organization and evolve. And again, this is one of the things that is when project management systems fail, this is one of the reasons is people don't think of anything past go live. It's all right, we're going to go live, we're done. Well, no, you're not done. You're actually just getting going. You need to have the all these pieces in place. So the first piece we recommend there is review and assign roles for the key ownership areas. And I'm going to show you a matrix here in a moment. It can look a little daunting. It's not as bad as it looks, but it does give you a matrix of all the areas to go consider and make sure that you've thought through who's doing what for all the pieces. The next piece is, this is just a recommendation that there is an elevated support component. And this is really more in the traditional kind of support. So if you have, a lot of times we'll have 150, 200, 250 users that are going live with a particular PPM solution. You need to make sure that the right structures are in place for a few months and then adjust as necessary. But almost always that elevated support goes down until you might maybe do some kind of big revision to the system in the future. This piece is about making, putting it into action. And when you establish meeting cadences for change control, release management, those kinds of things, status meetings, and owners for those, and we'll get to that in a minute, then that actually turns it into more of a living process, right? So reviewing the engagement process, reporting and escalation, that's more of a management feature. And then management or the owner of the system needs to make sure that they're going in and doing routine reviews. A big piece of that where you start to see evidence of this not going right is when information coming out of a project management system was really good and then starts to not be so good, and things are getting stale, people aren't using the system, people are taking shortcuts, those kinds of things. So this is where the management oversight is critical. So what's the timing for that? Well, actually, we'll move on to the functional areas. So this is, there's two of these slides, and again, it's not nearly as daunting as it looks. What you really have to do is just go in and make sure you understand each of these areas. Some of the more important ones, some are more important than others. This one is absolutely critical, and that is the product ownership. You have to make sure that you have the named individual as the product owner, that there's one, so we've heard some people say chokehold neck, but there's somebody that's there that says, I take responsibility for this, I'll go make sure I get funding for it, I'll make sure that we're doing the things we need to do as an organization, whether that's through direct authority or influence or whatever, to make sure that people are doing what they need to do with the system. So the stakeholder engagement, this one's important if you start to involve multiple stakeholders. So if you have like departments or work groups, then you need to have an owner of each of those areas. So that's really critical. This one right here, this management of architectural changes, and having a PPM architect or a partner that has architectural capabilities and has full understanding of the system and any proposed changes and things like that, that's absolutely critical as well. So those are three of the more critical roles. You need to do all the different pieces, the change management, change control, and the release management cycle needs to be managed. The user engagement, this is a piece that oftentimes the core group will take on originally, and then maybe for some of the coaching training, more kind of the power user kind of thing, right? So they can go in and help out folks. But then over time, it can develop, or you can have more or less formal structures for that. The administration piece, sometimes this is more, if you have like an end user services department or folks who are working more with your O365 or other areas, so that would be some of those folks, and it can also be potentially outsourced or taken on by a core group. We've seen some organizations grow their core group to be fairly large to manage these systems and make sure that all these processes, sometimes they'll even build websites or put it on a project website to have the status of everything that's going on from a release management perspective to what's coming up in the next release, all those kinds of things. And what is that? That is actually an ongoing. So that's something that really needs to be, as I said, it's critical that it's established in a smaller implementation. When you go fill in all these TBDs here, oftentimes there's a lot of people's names that are the same. Larger organizations, like I said, you may end up having discrete folks who take on those different pieces. So, but it is important to understand this is a big piece of this ongoing success. So with that, we actually have gotten through, we're trying to get through in 40 minutes or so. I think we're just about on time. We'd scheduled for around 45 minutes, I think. So would like to invite questions in the question area to see. Looks like somebody has their hand raised. Questions? I see some hellos there. I see a question. How well does this work with the GCC? We actually have a instance. It works with the GCC. So the short answer is yes, it does work with the GCC. The GCC, what they call GCC low, which does not currently work with the GCC high. We don't know what those plans will be. Looks like Mark has a question. Can you go back a couple slides and show the matrix again? Yes, I can do that, Mark. Let's see. Which part of the matrix? This is the first part. So you got product ownership, stakeholder engagement, control, change control management. I'll give you a second to look at that one, and then I'll move on to this one, which then has your release cycle management, your user engagement, and your administration. So hopefully that answers. All right, sure thing, Mark. Other questions? How is Edison reporting different than Power BI? Great question, Casper. So Power BI allows you. It's a reporting. It's a business intelligent reporting tool that can attach directly to Microsoft Project Online. Or it can attach to a SQL data mart. What the Edison reporting piece, which is actually called Data Store, does is it actually takes those OData feeds, which is how data is moved out. This gets a little bit technical, but how data is moved out of Project Online and pulls them into a central data mart. Typically, it's a Microsoft Azure SQL instance, so it's fairly quick to set up. You don't have to go build a whole server. You just buy the SQL Azure SQL instances you buy in a SQL server, and that data mart, that SQL data mart that's sitting there, allows you not just from Power BI, but from anything that can attach to SQL to do more robust reporting, and it actually does trending and other things. You can pull more information into it than you can with just through the OData feeds. So Dominic. Say missed the part, but Edison and Project Server are together in the application. So Project Online is the core platform. Edison is an extension that is added onto it, and it actually enhances the capabilities and provides things like the data store. Does that make sense, Dominic? Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, perfect. Casper, did I answer your question? You're welcome. Can we touch base outside the call? Yeah, sure, absolutely, Casper. Yeah. Can you please compare Power BI and Tableau for reporting in Project Online? Which one is advised? Nasser, that is a great question. I don't know that I can answer that. Could give you a good answer without having more information. And one of the gentlemen that's on the call from our side, Matt Freilich, is our VP of PPM and business intelligence, and he probably could help you with that. I think we probably need to know more about the context. We have customers who use both, sometimes in the same environment. So it goes a lot to context. Power BI is probably easier to use, where Tableau is more of an enterprise solution, but they both will work. Now, Tableau, without having a reporting engine, I can tell you that without having something like Data Store in there from Edison that builds a SQL data mart, Tableau does sometimes have some issues with the OData feeds out of the box because they're not a strict or a pure adherence to the OData scheme, if that makes sense. And that's about as far as my technical knowledge goes. So happy to touch base outside of this call, Nasser, if that helps. Okay, so yeah, you've run into that issue. Yep. So we could help you with that. At least it could give you some direction, probably. So happy to chat outside this call. Great questions. Really appreciate that. Oh, thanks, Tad. He said he really liked the foundation slide with the pyramid versus the Leaning Tower of Pisa analogy. Thanks. I think that came to me in a dream, but no, I'm just kidding. Does anybody have any other questions? So it's been great questions. Like I said, Pamela will be putting together the deck and we'll be sending it out to everyone. Again, let me go back to this slide, let you guys have a quick look at this before you get the deck. There's all our contact information. You guys feel free to reach out, contact us. We'd love to go into more depth. 45 minutes isn't enough time to cover everything. Obviously, we could go in all kinds of different directions, whatever you want to do. Show you more about Edison, talk about how Project Online works, our experience with the different components of it, all that kind of stuff. All right. Thanks a lot, Nasser. He said, great presentation. Really appreciate it. All right. If there's no other questions, we will go ahead, and looks like we're right at 2:45. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. All right. Thank you, Owen. And look forward to hearing from folks. So appreciate your time this afternoon. Have a great day. Take care. Oh, Casper's got another one. What's that? Give him another second here. Does it integrate into Dynamics 365? That's a tricky question. Presently, not exactly. There are, yeah, it might be a discussion for later. There's ways you can do some of that. Yeah, but right now it's a separate thing. There is the PSA automation, professional services automation, which there's some integration points to, which is a part of Dynamics 365. Yes, but it probably need to know more context to your question. So happy to discuss later. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.